David Stennis from the Australian Rock Show. How are you?
G'day, mate. I'm fantastic. Great to hear your voice.
Well, it's so great to get you on the show. I've been a big supporter of yours for some time, especially with the outfit Poor Little Things. The new release is called Deal Breaker, which is the main reason which we've got you on the phone today. However, we are going to dig a little into your history as well. Before we do, I have got to say congratulations on the new release. Many positive reviews online, which you've shared on social media. May I say well deserved. You must be delighted with how the new album's been received.
Thanks very much, mate. Yeah, I am. You know, it's a fun project, PLT. We have a lot of fun with it, and of course, it's gratifying to know that people actually dig it. You do music primarily for yourself, and it's like any kind of art should the first and foremost you should be doing it for yourself, and then when other people dig it, fantastic. So we're very happy with the response with radio and with reviews. Can't complain at all.
Cool. Now, I guess as a brief intro for those who may be unfamiliar with the world of Dave Talon, I found an entry for you online which simply states, Guitarist, Rollerball / Poor Little Things / The Marlboro Men, formerly Kings of the Sun / Captain Control. I guess going on from that very brief introduction, and again for the unknowing, over the past 2 decades, those 5 bands you've been involved with have produced quite an impressive body of work. And it's quite a detailed discography. Mate, you seem to be one of the busiest musicians I know. Where does that passion and I guess the work ethic come from?
I just love doing it. I am pretty motivated. Not always. You have to push yourself sometimes. Like I'm thinking right now. I'm trying to get myself motivated to start writing some music right now, as in today, as we speak. And it's always a bit daunting at the start of whatever you're trying to create. But I just love doing it. I love going through the whole process of getting a piece of paper and a guitar and getting some ideas. And I don't really love writing lyrics, but I'm always happy when someone else is doing that. But if that's got to be done, I have to dig in and see what I've got to say as well, or just go with a vibe. And I've just, ever since I started playing guitar when I was 11, I wrote my first song when I was probably 12, I guess. And then, 13, get a 4-track recorder with your mates, borrow one from a music shop that thinks you might buy it, and, laid out a track. So I've just always been interested in the whole process, and it's just really satisfying to go through it and then at the end get the reward of, being able to set it free and let it do its own thing. You know what I mean? Like music becomes its own little thing, goes off and has its own life, so to speak.
You just mentioned 11, which I was going to ask, when was your gateway into rock and roll? Was it older siblings or? I
was very lucky, but my dad played guitar. He's like one of those 60s coffee shop folk music people. Just did it as a hobby. And my earliest memories are, mum's gone out, maybe mum's gone playing bingo or something, and dad's on the bed, with his mate and acoustic guitar strumming easy beat songs and things like that. And you get the kids gather around. My brother had one brother at the time, and we'd sit there and listen to him. And suddenly, after a few years of that, a lot of these songs that he sang sort of become your own because you know them like you've been hearing them on the radio or something. Then I got my grandfather also played guitar on my mother's side. My mother's father was a jazz guitarist, quite good. He played semi-professionally. And my dad gave me my first cassette when I was, I guess, about 7. I got a Beatles cassette, like a Beatles compilation cassette that he made for me. And, within 6 months of that, I was into Kiss and AC/DC. And within another year, I was into, or 2, I was into Deep Purple and then Iron Maiden and then so on. And, I've just been pretty much obsessed with music ever since then.
I mean, obviously you're absorbing so much of that stuff and so much of your recorded material is littered with hooks and catchy choruses. I mean, you've obviously picked up that awareness from much of the stuff you were listening to early on. So going on, you just mentioned a few bands. Who else were you listening to and learning from, I guess?
Oh, it's just so many stuff. Well, even though I started basically the Beatles to Kiss, that was like, if you think about 1979 or 1980, that was like the center of the universe. It was all about basically Kiss once it got that happening. And, they're all about hooks, I guess. But at the same time as I went on my heavy metal path through my early teens, I was still buying those various artist albums that we all loved in Australia in the early 80s. Those compilation of the hits of the last 3 months, like Hitwave 82,
sure.
or, all that kind of stuff. So I still enjoyed that, which meant there was a certain point, back in that time when rock and pop were one of the same is what I always say, when guitar-driven pop music, etc. So, I was really into that. I still like to listen to those records sometimes now. So, that was, great pop music, and I love that.
Interesting side note, as you would know from being a Kiss fan, as well as the Beatles, really those two bands, all four members were individual in their own way, and you didn't have to be a music fan to be able to spot that, McCartney was in the Beatles or Frehley was in Kiss. I can't think of any other act apart from those two where they're instantly recognisable from being in that act. Quite ironic that you've named those two bands.
Yeah, I guess they're the perfect way for an introduction, isn't it? And of course, the easy beats, things like that. Easy beats were big around my house because my dad, grew up listening to that stuff, and he's the same age as them, basically. And so they're basically something I'd call them like some kind of a cross between the Beatles and the Stones, aren't they? The easy beats are a couple of years behind those bands, but you could afford to be a bit behind in being in Australia in the 60s and still have a commercial scene. Of course, I love the early Bee Gees and, singer-songwriter stuff. I love it all.
So, although you were raised on the Gold Coast, for those listeners who may be unaware, you and your partner Tina, who of course provides the wonderful lead vocals in Poor Little Things, have called Switzerland home for many years now, about 10 odd years if I'm not mistaken. What was behind the Swiss move?
Well, Martina's Swiss. We met in Australia, and she lived in Australia with me. We got married quite quickly. It's actually our 19th wedding anniversary tomorrow. First 8 years of the marriage, we were in Australia. But, if you're going to marry someone from another country, you've got to be open to the idea of, embracing that country as well. You can't really, I guess people do, but I personally wouldn't say, marry me and live in my country. So after 8 years, we said I'd been over here quite a few times, and I thought, well, why not try it out? Why not do something different? And so far, so good. 12 years here.
Cool. And I guess as a side note, and I think I may have told you this some time back, but I did see Kiss in Zurich back in December of 1996 at the Hallenstadion. I was in front of Ace Frehley with no earplugs, and I'm pretty sure my occasional tinnitus can be traced back to that event, Kiss in Zurich, December of 96. So there you go.
Yeah, there were a lot less laws, especially I remember like seeing Motorhead in the early 90s, something where I definitely got some damage. There was just white noise. And definitely got, there are certain gig landmarks you think back over, 80s, 90s, etc., where you really did get your ears copped a roasting.
So Poor Little Things is a musical partnership of Martina and yourself. How did you form? And I'm also curious about the origins of the band name.
Well, basically, Martina sang in her teens, just in, bands with high school friends and things like that. And, I was open to the idea if she ever wanted to do something with me. But, she always said, oh, no, we'll let it go. And then it just came to a point one day, I think it was after a Juliet and the Licks gig that we attended, that she was sort of fired up, on the way home and said, why don't we do something? Would you write a song that, that I could sing or whatever? And for me, it opened up a whole new or fresh opportunity because I could write songs that I couldn't really pull off singing myself. And it's totally different from other things. I just got to, scratch that pop itch a little bit, because I like that kind of stuff and, unashamedly. And, it just opened a whole new window. And that's probably why it hasn't been so hard to put out 3 releases with a few hooks and things, because I probably had all that bottled up inside me.
Well, we kicked off this show with the extremely catchy Ball and Chain, lifted from Deal Breaker, hand claps, some sing-along haze in there as well. Those are becoming a key ingredient to the band's, hook-filled sound. But I guess what's the history behind Ball and Chain?
Let's see. Well, I guess I'm writing songs I'm going down two avenues. I'm not trying to pigeonhole what we do. I'm just sort of channeling the 70s vibe and the early 80s vibe rather than going with one or the other. I'm not really, when you're releasing an independent release and you're doing it primarily for self-satisfaction, you don't have to pigeonhole your sound and lock in a certain certain styles. So ball and chain, it's a little bit like I did on the record before that on Disco's Burning. We had another track, what's it called, Waiting on the Line. And this is sort of where I'm trying to get into that 70s, seeing a little bit the rock opera, Meatloaf kind of vibe without, probably you'd listen to that and think, what's he talking about? But, in my head, I'm just trying to go for that, rock opera, high school musical production kind of thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And with the lyrics, I'm never trying to give out any big messages with the lyrics. People can interpret them however they like. I can't say I'm some guy living on the streets with, a lot to say about, the wrongs and the heartache and all that kind of thing. I am privileged to live a pretty comfortable life. So quite often I'm revisiting my past or, thinking from other people's point of view when I'm writing the lyrics. So, people can take it how they want. It's, we never want to be political or talk about anything more than having a good time. My biggest problem is I want to use the tambourine too much, and Martina has to sort of pull me back a bit and say, ease off with the tambourines and the bongos and the whatever. I just want to have that rock and roll party vibe. Like the Beach Boys in the the transcendental meditation days of the Beach Boys, where they used to do those, you hear everybody in the room basically clapping out of time and all that kind of thing. I really like that vibe.
Mate, the album kicks off with Fire It Up, which I just love. A little nod there to 1976 era Kiss with that intro, a nasty sounding V8 roaring off before ripping into the song. Just love that. And there is also a very cool music video, which you've got up on YouTube for Fire It Up as well. Again, great stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, well, definitely, I can't lie. I definitely took influence from the Detroit Rock City with the intro. Couldn't help it. And the video clip is really old school. It's that Saturday morning cartoon kind of vibe. And we went specially to a guy who specializes in that kind of thing. A guy who really loves that whole late 70s, early 80s morning cartoon vibe. So, and he didn't let us down. We pretty much gave him, free rein because we knew he'd take it in the right direction. Obviously, because we're Australian, he went a little Mad Max, but he's also got a bit of the Sorcerer in there. You know that movie, The Sorcerer?
No, I dig it, and I think anyone
credit to that.
Anyone who from our vintage, I guess, and younger, if they want to see how things worked back then, should check that out. It's a great time period. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I'm there. I'm watching Lance Link, Secret Chimp, and things like that all the time. So yeah, I'm still there.
I've never left, but anyway. I do, of course, need to make mention of the striking cover art, courtesy of illustrator Claudio Bergerman, who's also designed wonderful covers for Judas Priest and Burning Witches. If we were in a different era and Deal Breaker was in the album racks, that cover alone would instantly draw people to it and pick the thing up. I guess eye-catching really doesn't do it justice. People have to check it out.
I think it's fantastic myself. Basically, it's so hard these days, people scrolling by, and the whole idea, back in the day, I remember on a Friday night, I'd go to Impact Records in Canberra. I'm sure we could talk about that on another level. But I'd go to a record shop a little bit tipsy on a Friday night when I was 15 or whatever. And, of course, you just went by the album cover, didn't you? And these days it's the same. People are scrolling through. And what's going to get them to actually stop for a millisecond, let alone click on something? So you need a good album cover. And that's why we went to Claudio, because he's good at what he does. And we had a really solid, ridiculous concept. And we thought, who could pull that off? Claudio could pull that off. So, we let him, we basically gave him a brief and gave him also a little bit of freedom so it wasn't boring for him. And the combination of what we wanted and what he added it's sort of, I think it's sort of, it's the right mood. It creates what we want to represent, basically.
Dave, once again, this release contains many strong songs, and the one I've chosen to close this show out with is called The Cutest in the Band. Super catchy, great guitar solo, and a riff that I just love. That for mine is a little reminiscent of Divinals and Boys in Town, which I just love. What can you tell us about The Cutest in the Band?
Yeah, once I started playing that riff, etc., I definitely thought, oh yeah, this sounds like a Divinals kind of a tune. So there's no doubt that I went with the vocal phrasing and the riff, etc. I definitely went with, once I got on that road, I just kept visualizing what would the Divinals do if they sort of started with this riff, etc., and kept going. So I don't mind that it's got that obvious nod to Divinals, because that's great pop as far as I'm concerned. Great guitar pop, anything they did. Fantastic. So, I wanted to go over that. And the story, it is a basic sort of a story too, just about a guy I knew who, had a few drug problems, and, how it always goes. He was still admired by certain people, even though he was on the way down. He still had a certain, grip on what he did in the music world. He still had stage presence. He still rocked, but at the same time, he was on the way out, so to speak. And it's a good excuse for a rock tune.
Although we are focusing on the new release, Deal Breaker, whilst I've got you on the phone, I do want to highlight just a couple of tracks from the first two releases, starting with the self-titled track off the Panic Attack album. That one remains in the listener's head forever. And it's seared. You mentioned before about writing something which is going to remain in the listener's head. That one is seared into my rock and roll brain, and I can be driving and the chorus will come into my head, Panic Attack. And as you know, that first EP from 2018, when I first heard it, just floored me. I did a video review of that one online if listeners wish to search it out. In particular, Dave, the 1-2 punch of the first two songs made me an instant fan. Rock and Roller, which I still think should be pitched at Cherie Currie or Susie Quattro, by the way. I really dug, and has damn cool lyrics like Soaked in Attitude, Jeans Are Really Tight, He Was Born to Lose, Baby on a Saturday Night. Love that.
Yeah, that's my, I guess I had an image of some kind of a typical Aussie character at an it could have been an RSL club or a casino or whatever, just going through his Friday night ritual or whatever, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And, with the whole 1-2 punch thing, I like the way you said it, because I made a record once. I was lucky enough to do a record where Mark Opitz produced and engineered it. And, I made the most of the opportunity and sat there with him every night for hours chatting about all sorts of things, sort of milking him for information. And his whole concept of hitting people, 1, 2, 3, 4 with the songs, just don't give them a rest for the first 10, 15 minutes of the album. I've always taken that on board. He really introduced that with the, what's the Angels album from 78, Face to Face. If you think about Face to Face, it's like that. You know what I mean? It's bang, 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 relentless hooks and pop and drive and whatever. And I've sort of taken that on board. I think that's a good thing. There's no time, especially these days, with people clicking and scrolling, not even committing to putting a piece of vinyl on a turntable. You've got no time to warm them up. With a long intro or build to something. You've got to sort of hit them hard in the first 10 minutes if you want to keep them to the end of the record, or at least halfway.
Well, if you don't mind, I am going to quote from the aforementioned review, which I wrote for that EP. And I wrote, second track up could in fact be my favourite track out of the 5, which is called Break Another Heart. It's extremely catchy, well-crafted pop rock tunage and highlights the alluring and very likeable voice of Martina Jackson. Break Another Heart even comes complete with a boisterous hey ho sing along in the chorus, which puts a smile on this face, and it really does highlight guitarist Dave Talon's pop sensibilities, not to mention a knack of being able to add that little bit of zest into a tune which can already lift a catchy piece of music to a much higher level, such is the case with Break Another Heart. Dave, I am going to crank Break Another Heart in a moment, as I really think more people need to hear it. And I just know it's going to capture the ears of many of our listeners. I guess, where did the zest and pop sensibility come from for Break Another Heart?
Well, I definitely think that's a bit of a DD-esque kind of a tune. And, you know, that's another thing with me with songwriting, which another good tip I got off Opitz, you know, a bit of a little mentor thing, was to build as you go with songs, to add that little bit more. Like maybe the first chorus doesn't have all the cheesy clapping and tambourine, but the second chorus does, or like the introduction of the haze, etc. It's good to actually build a song over a couple of minutes rather than just give them everything at once. So that was part of it. When I think of the Haze and Hose, I love that kind of stuff, but it always reminds me of Japanese punk bands like the Blue Hearts.
All right, Dave, although I did wish to focus this chat on Poor Little Things, many of our listeners will, of course, be familiar with you from your time in Rollerball, so I am going to shine the light on Rollerball for a quick moment. If my memory is correct, the band formed around 1998 and tasted quite a bit of underground success within Australia. From memory, there's 4 albums, a couple of EPs and singles as well. Hard for me to pick a starting point or a highlight, but you just mentioned Mark Opitz. Surely recording that 2004 album Oversize with Opitz was one of Rollerball's highlights and your highlights?
It was. As I've said, you know, I learned a lot from the whole experience. It was maybe a little bit overproduced. Basically, we hired Opes, or through the record label. You know, we recommended to the record label could they hire Opes, and we wanted him for his early 80s, you know, late 70s, early 80s production style. But what we basically got was his late 80s production style. Right. You know what I mean? He sort of brought the Blow Your Cool production to Rollerball. But a lot of people don't mind that. And, you know, now looking back, I don't mind it either. It's good to have a variety of sounds and productions, etc. Not just going to do it following the same formula every time. So, yeah. You
mentioned the Easy Beats influence before, and I recall a quote you made at the time of release for the Let Your Hair Hang Down EP in 2000, where you said, "Paying tribute to Stevie has been one of my pastimes for as long as I can remember. He eventually got the credit he deserved and maybe found a little peace." What was it about Stevie Wright which had an impact on you?
I just, you know, obviously from my very early childhood through my father, I got really into the band, and you know, he's an important part of the band. If somebody else in the Easy Beats had such a tragic life, I probably would have had, you know, the same kind of feeling for them. But everybody else seemed to get on with their, you know, normal life as civilians, or they went on to be great producers and you know, successful in the music industry at the highest level, whereas he sort of struggled. You know, I've read all the books and things. I read his autobiography. I read also the unofficial autobiography you'd be familiar with, the not sorry, but the other one where the guy went and hang out with him. But you know, I was into it. I was actually putting together a band for Stevie. I was lucky enough to meet the best friend of his longtime partner, and through her I was putting together a band, but it was all very complicated. This was towards the end. This was maybe in 2007 or so. And basically he could only do a 20-minute set, and it was a lot of to and fro, and after a couple of months it was a bit too hard. Yeah. But I'm just a huge fan, and it was just, you know, he never reached his potential, and you know, I love his work.
Mate, 2 years back, Rollerball embarked on a bunch of Australian dates, which took in 3 states, which was to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Lost in Space. Must have been a blast to fly back to Australia and play, I guess, to older and new fans alike. Any plans for another Australian jaunt?
We had a great time. I just had a big grin on my face the whole time, because it was just really cool to play the songs again and to sort of, you know, just to and hear the fans singing along, whatever. So yeah, it was really satisfying, and we hadn't made a definite date, but we sort of had it penciled in that we were going to do something again this year, but obviously everything's just been in limbo. So there's definitely intention to do something again. I wouldn't say that we'd be making another record or anything like that, but I'm definitely interested. I know the other guys are too, in doing some shows again at some point, but who knows when. Who knows when?
Good to hear. Well, from memory, back in the day, Rollerball did supports with everyone from Henry Rollins, the Screaming Jets, the Angels, and the Tats. Also, Budgie's 2009 Australian tour,
Yeah.
and I believe the band gigged at the Bathurst races in 2000. Any fond memories from those particular shows come to mind, Dave?
Oh, yeah, a lot. Well, playing with Budgie, that was cool. Craig Goldie, who's, a great guitar player. He was a barrel of fun. Lots of bands were always really good to us, and we had a good time. We tried to stay out of trouble. Well, I tried to keep some other certain people out of trouble, I guess. And Bathurst, we played once on the mountain at Bathurst. We're the only band to ever play up on the top.
Wow.
Actually, on the mountain at night and at nighttime, with a team of Samoan guys looking after us. It was flaming toilet rolls and cars on fire while we were actually playing. It's great. There is actually video footage of that, and I've got someone digging it up and digitizing it. So I'm hoping to, sometime in the next 6 months, I'm hoping to come up with some footage online of our gig on the mountain. Basically, there were supposed to be strippers, and then the strippers were too scared to come up. So the stage manager came to the side of the stage and said, "Can you please tell well, you can loosely call it an audience, can you tell the horde that the strippers aren't coming?" And we didn't tell them. We said, no, that's not our job. And we played, and if you see the video, I'm hoping to get this video footage. It's basically flaming projectiles landing all around the stage, people putting out fires while we're playing. It's great. Good memories.
Fond memories.
Yeah, we had a contract that basically said, unruly behaviour will occur. You must play on. That was in the contract.
Wow. Mate, having been raised on the Gold Coast, what were some of your favourite live venues? I guess even as a punter, Bombay Rock, the Playroom, Chevron Skyline Lounge.
Oh, you're speaking my language. So I moved to the Gold Coast when I was 15. So in the 80s, that meant you could basically go to most nightclubs. Queensland was very loose with the whole, licensing thing. I was thinking about that the other day when you used to go to a club and they'd say, "You got any ID?" and say no. They'd say, "Well, fill out this form and then you can go in anyway. As long as you say, if I get in trouble, it was my fault. It's my responsibility." They let you in.
Yeah.
So I used to go, Skyline Lounge. I never saw any bands at the Skyline, but I used to go there drinking. Problem was I didn't have enough pocket money to keep the party rolling. You know what I mean? When you're 15, you've drunk a quarter of a bottle of, rum with your mates somewhere on the beach, and now you've probably got, $5 to $10 left for the rest of the night. You're going to walk home. You're going to get, a rum and coke or whatever I drank at the time was about $2.50. So, you had a couple of drinks and you were out of there. But as far as venues go, the Playroom, of course, I must have played at the Playroom at least, 30 times, opening for other big bands. And I've seen so many incredible bands at the Playroom. As far as, I never actually got into Bombay Rock. I tried to get in to see the Cult there one night on the Electric Tour. I didn't get in. I was a bit unlucky. But what's some other venues? So many.
Cool and Gator Hotel was
the Patch. Oh, yeah, we played at the Patch a few times. I remember in a band that I used to play years ago called Load, we played an all-you-can-drink night. We paid a gig where basically it was like $6 to get in, and then it was just free drinks all night. Can you imagine that happening these days? So they had their cheap vodka and their cheap their cheap rum and whatever, and they just pumped it out with cola and lemonade and beer all night long to a packed house. That's the kind of gig you want to play.
Actually, there was a random one just popped in my head. I know you dig Thin Lizzy. They played Brisbane in 78 at the Botanical Gardens. Did you get along to that, or you weren't up there then?
Where was I in Brisbane? In '78, I lived in Hong Kong, believe it or not, in '78. My dad was a military man, so I moved around all over the place. It wasn't until I was 15 that I got to settle on the Gold Coast, just in time for the the pub scene or the fantastic 80s Gold Coast nightclub scene.
Just going on from that, Dave, we ain't got enough time today to cover all of your journey, but as someone who loved the Hoad brothers and the Mighty Kings of the Sun, I do wish to quiz you about working with Clifford Hoad on the 2013 Rock Till You Die album. I'm guessing you'd ran into Cliff a lot up there over the years, which is how you got the gig in the Kings? Yeah,
well, I've been drinking with Cliff and Jeff for years. They were just characters that you'd always see around, and we became good friends. When they tried to set up their new sort of look and everything and went for the Rich and Famous, when they changed their name, they came along with Rollerball, and we did a lot of shows with them. We even took them down to Sydney with us, and we just had a great time with those guys, and we always got along. And then I guess when Cliff decided to make a new record and Jeff wasn't available, he needed to put together a team and asked me to be part of it. I was already living in Switzerland at the time, so it wasn't so practical. But, I'm such a fan, and I really wanted to help him out as well. So, it was an easy thing for me to do to get involved, and interesting times. Very interesting.
What did you take away from your time working with Clifford? A phenomenal drummer. He's always drums very Spider-like, if you know what I mean. Just a great drummer.
He's an incredible drummer, and he drums on the record. He sang on the record. It was all his concept, his songs. Quinton and I just came in and just sort of he showed us his songs. He's not really a guitar player, but he had all this stuff down. He'd worked out what he wanted to do, and just got us to sort of put it, translate basically what he'd come up with and put it down. He's an incredible drummer, but when we played live, we had another drummer as well. We had two drummers live, not for every show, but we did do shows with the two drummers, and we're talking two powerhouse drummers, two of the heaviest hitters I've ever heard, both playing at the same time.
Wow!
And in the rehearsal room, it was quite incredible. Yeah, so that's something in itself. I learned a lot from Cliff. He knows all about how to make rock and roll tune, the whole experience, the playing with the two drummers, etc. That was all fun. We went and played at Sweden Rock at the biggest festival in Scandinavia. That was cool. So I got a lot of positives to take away. We didn't always see eye to eye on everything, Cliff and I, but in the long run, I play that record occasionally, and I really enjoy it. I think it's got some cool songs. And it's basically I got the left, Quinton's got the right, left and right guitars.
Yeah.
And we both sort of did our own thing. Obviously, we had to work together, but we didn't strictly just play the same thing. We tried to complement each other in what we played. It's a good experience, and I like the record, and I'm glad I went through the whole process. I think it was good.
Mate, we should start to wind this up. It's been fantastic to finally get you on the show. Congratulations once again on Deal Breaker. Just love it. All three releases have been stellar, and I really hope more people continue to get on board with Poor Little Things. PoorLittleThings.bandcamp.com. That is the place to purchase the product. And whilst you're there on Bandcamp, I encourage listeners to check out Rollerball.bandcamp.com if they are not familiar with some of that material as well. Mate, what's in the pipeline for Dave Talon and indeed Poor Little Things over the next 6 to 12 months?
Oh, definitely want to do another. Oh, first of all, thanks, mate. Thank you very much. I really appreciate, that you like the records, and that's fantastic. So, but basically, we will do some more Poor Little Things stuff. I'm thinking we might do something a little bit heavy, a little heavier.
Okay.
We don't need to just sort of be in a, because we're just an independent band having a good time. We don't really need to go into any pigeonhole, and we kind of, if you think about the songs like this Fire It Up song on the record, that's what I mean by heavier. Go a little bit more heavy guitar orientated, maybe even a little bit proggy at times. Who knows? So we're going to do something. First of all, I want to make another Marlboro Men record. So that's what I've got in my head at the moment. I'm just trying to work out how am I going to do that. I want to pull off a half an hour of sort of heavy hitting instrumental stuff that can keep people interested and not bore them and sound fresh or whatever. So that's something I'm just trying to get my head around at the moment. And then once that's done, I'll probably turn my attention to a little bit more PLT.
Any chance of piecing a band together around you two for Poor Little Things and doing some live work in that part of the world?
Yeah, we've thought about it. Got a couple of people I know here that would fit in quite well. We'd only need two other members or maybe three would be good. It's definitely on the cards. It's just everything that I think about as far as live performance has just been in limbo.
Yeah,
for quite a while now. So and I really didn't want to think about live too much because it just annoyed me a little bit. Got a bit frustrated about the whole thing. But it's on the cards. You never know. Maybe we'll just go and do a bit of busking first, the two of us. That could be a bit of fun, just to get the vibe going, just to build the motivation a little bit. But it's a lot of work to get the whole thing up and running when you've got a band. Even though we've got the songs all there. The whole setting up of the infrastructure to get it happening, it could be worthwhile, especially in Europe. We've got a lot of good connections in Spain, etc. It would be good to go and play there. But we'll see.
If people want to keep in touch with you and your activities, is Facebook the best place for them to do that?
Yeah. So every website that I've had with music is I've just pretty much let die. As far as websites go, everything sort of pretty much happens around the Stalker book and, a bit of Instagram, things like that. So you can definitely, if you look, at any of these bands, they all have a page on Facebook, and anything that's going on significance, you're always going to find it there. That's basically around. Or, my own, they can become friends with me on Facebook as well. I enjoy having like-minded people on there if they want to come and chat with me. I'm open for a chat.
Cool. As you may know, Dave, every guest on our show gets to choose a song by an Australian band, something significant to you. What would you like to choose and why?
It's funny, now you said that, instantly, within like a few seconds, I had my track. I don't know, 1,000 tracks must have just flashed by me, and then I instantly wanted to Shoot It Up by the Angels.
Wow, why have you gone with that?
I just love it. It always and I love the performance on that live at Navara gig, and played with the Angels a few times, and I remember quizzing the Brewsters about that song because, I loved it so much. And, just the story about it, that it was written on the road in the States, basically written on a tour bus or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it's just means a lot to me, that tune. I just think it's an incredible riff, very fresh, very unique song. So
wonderful choice. Not a lot of people know it, so it's a wonderful choice, and great. We will close out with that. Dave, Thank you again, and good luck for the rest of the year, and please keep in touch.
Thanks, mate. Always enjoyed chatting with you. It's a pleasure. Rock and roll.